Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today for the launch of the NextGen European Taskforce. I'm Emily Laverick, Marketing Director at prop tech company Built ID and Vice Chair of the CPA NextGen Committee. CPA NextGen is an initiative designed to support and engage younger people working in the industry. It seeks to make the voices heard of the next generation of industry leaders, improving their knowledge and growing their networks. The CPA NextGen programme is supported by NextGen champion Gardner and Theobald. We're really pleased to announce the collaboration between the CPA and the IE School of Architecture and Design NextGen communities through the launch of this NextGen European Taskforce. Together, we'll work hand in hand in a series of roundtables to promote the exchange of diverse and international talent across borders. The role of educational institutions in preparing the next generation of ideas and the importance of maintaining pan-European connections and collaborative opportunities for the built environment as we look forward to the future. I'm joined here today by some exceptional panellists who will lead the discussion on the state of the European market, the need for cross-collaboration, and the benefits of next-gen networks and intergenerational learning. I'll now ask our panellists to give a short introduction to themselves. Martha, if you don't mind going first, please.
Thanks so much, Emily. It's really a pleasure to be here. And I'm Martha Thorne, Dean at IE School of Architecture and Design. And until just a few weeks ago, I had served for 15 years as the Executive Director of the Pritzker Architecture Prize. I'm coming to you from my office in Madrid, where IE School of Architecture is located. We have a campus in Madrid, in Segovia, and in the virtual world. And just to tell you very briefly about our school, we're one of 5 schools within IE University. IE was founded as a business school about 43 years ago. And the School of Architecture and Design shares some of the DNA of our colleague schools, but we're also a little bit different. We try to bring together the digital, the natural, and the built environment. We see cross-disciplinary collaboration while trying to keep a very rigorous and deep root in our disciplinary fields. Our students come from all over the world, and we all share a common language of English, and each with a different accent. So with that, Emily, I'll leave it there and pass it on to the next participant.
Thank you, Martha. And we'll go to you, Deborah.
Hi, I'm Deborah Saunt, and I'm similarly connected between architecture and education as well. I run an architecture, urban design and research studio here in London, and we employ lots of people from around the world, including many from Europe. And we even have people who work between Europe and the UK under the last year's circumstances. But I'm also the co-founder of the London School of Architecture, which brings together business and learning to create a unique sort of hybrid learning model where you're part based in an academic setting and part in a work setting. So I'm very interested in the sort of role of learning, lifelong learning, as well as young learning, and the way that the next gen can add to that.
Thanks, Deborah. Alfonso?
Hi, Emily, thank you very much. Thank you to all our audience. I'm a lawyer by trade, but a real estate lawyer. And also, amongst other jobs, I am the chairman of Urban Land Institute in Madrid, which means I've been involved very closely with anything that has to do with the city, communities, planning, investment, etc. I'm based in Madrid. I'm also a professor at one of the programs of IE School of Architecture, where I think this year we have 26 nationalities. So very keen to share any knowledge or experience that could be helpful to our listeners. Thank you.
Thanks, Alfonso. And Abigail.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm Abby Shapiro. I'm the Senior VP, Head of Office Retail and Life Sciences at Oxford Properties for Europe. Oxford, for those that aren't familiar with us, is it's about a $60 billion global real estate arm of OMERS, which is the public sector pension fund, serving about 460,000 members in Ontario, Canada. I'm located in London at the moment, but I've been with Oxford now for about 10 years. So I've worked previously across London, Paris, and Berlin.
Thanks, Abigail. So I'm sure everyone will agree we all have some exceptional talent here with us today. I'll start by asking Alfonso and Abigail a question. The real estate sector is a global market and therefore demands cross-border collaboration. To kick things off, please could you give us a brief overview of some of the key trends that we're seeing across the European market at the moment? And that goes.
Abby, do you want to go ahead?
I'm happy to kickstart, and maybe we can feed off of each other a little bit. I mean, I would say, first of all, my observation is that the world just continues to get smaller. So, you know, I look back in my career, and I think when I started off, it was all about you stayed in one market for the duration of your career if you wanted to be successful in real estate. I think Oxford has really opened my eyes to actually a lot of the people that we're bumping into in different sectors and different regions. They are global in nature, and they're playing and they're competing or partnering with us in many different parts of the world, whether it's in Asia Pac, Europe, North America, et cetera. So in that sense, I think the world is getting smaller. I think then there's going to be some interesting trends that come from that. I mean, I think some of the things that I observe around, you know, the role that technology and ESG is now playing in real estate is becoming increasingly at the forefront of people's minds. And then when you intermix that with a strong dominance of global international investors and occupiers, I think we're going to continue to start seeing, and the dialogue will be around how to create the right levels of standardization across many different markets, which, you know, I think personally will lead to more cross-border movement of people and talent and ideas than we've ever seen before.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think tech, ESG, definitely very big trends. Another one is that the amount of capital raised to invest in real estate in last year was another year of a record amount. So the amount of interest, attraction, knowledge, you know, acquisition power into real estate is very, very big. So opportunities are there, even if we're in the COVID, even if, you know, your local economy may be struggling temporarily, keep your hopes high, because the business is coming, at least what I can see from my end. Another trend that I would say is pretty powerful right now, it's we need more residential. We need more affordable residential, and we need more social residential. In different segments, in different cities, most European countries are struggling because of prices of purchase, but also rentals have gone through the roof, and people are struggling to be able to pay for a place to live. I wouldn't be surprised if you ask the top 10 politicians in Europe, the top 10 priorities, one of them will be, we need more residential that is affordable, that is accessible to people. And I think this is going to shape lots of other things, but also COVID has mixed this trend with another one, which is now you can work from home, or at least you don't need to go to the office to work. And I think we don't know yet, because it's too early, we're too close to it, what is going to be the massive impact of people working 1, 2, 3, 4 days a week, not from the office, sometimes not even from the same country, like Deborah was saying. So I think these are some of the other trends, like Abby was saying, that I think are important right now.
I think I might just add one other thought, because I think, Alfonso, you also bring up one of the things that's also transpiring on the back of COVID, which is a trend that we've been working on for a long time in North America, and we are starting on now in Europe, but it's probably a good 5-10 years behind trend, but it's coming, is life sciences, and that plays into a lot of the macro themes around reducing birth rates, aging population, and how do you kind of enable people to live longer, more active lives, so that they can continue on in the workforce for a longer period than ever before. So we've got the distinct benefit. Actually, I'm very excited about being able to lead some of that work for Oxford here in Europe.
That all sounds super interesting. Thank you both. Alfonso, you mentioned that these trends, and Abby, seem to be sort of similar across all countries. How important do you think that cross-border collaboration is to the real estate sector?
Well, I think it's critical. I mean, we used to think several years ago that because there was this brick and mortar sort of physical element to real estate, that real estate was essentially local. And I think I still think, for example, development has a strong local element, but investment, the way you use real estate, what the tenants and the occupiers and the employees of the tenants want, is becoming universal. It's true that it goes somehow in waves. So some countries are ahead of other countries. Some trends are more powerful in one country than another. And to give you an example, I mean, we still keep working until very late hours in Spain. I don't know why we have this freaky, very long working day. Some other countries have managed to bring that down to 5 p.m., 5:30, 6 p.m. And that really impacts on how people live their lives. And that means what they do with their leisure, where they spend their money, where to get trained. I think this is all just changing. It's changing, and in each country is a little bit different. One other trend, if you allow me, which I think is super powerful, is because we're going to live longer. We're going to all need to retrain at least once in your life. And some of us, maybe I'm a bit too old, but the younger of you listening today, you're going to have 2 or maybe 3 careers. And one of the reasons why I'm passionate about teaching and young people is because I think the future is yours. And having different cultures living together, having people sharing work together, ideas, points of view, just because, well, as I said, not every country and not every person is at the same stage of, let's say, change. I think it's super, super attractive, and it's basically the future, because obviously the old formulas didn't work 100%. So we need new ones. And to get new ones, we need creative people, and we need people working together.
Malik, if I could jump in, something about what Alfonso and Abby have said, and I wanted to ask them for their opinion to see if it coincides with what I'm reading. The idea that more and more people will be working from home, I mean, we all talk about this, but we also have to remember, on one hand, it's not 100% of the population. It's less than half that have that opportunity to work from home. But that's one thing. That said, it is a trend for part of the population. On the other hand, what I did want to ask you is, it seems that in real estate, even in housing, but especially in offices and other types of buildings, there's always a push to efficiency. We have to make the most use of the square meters that we build. On the other hand, we've seen that with COVID, being efficient sometimes is not the best for flexibility. And I think you'll agree with me, going back to the office, we may do more hot desking and things like that, but it will be more and more important, those spontaneous encounters, and they happen, well, maybe in a cafe, maybe on the street. But if we want our offices to respond to the new needs of people, maybe the real estate industry cannot be so focused on efficiency, especially efficiency in the use of space. So I wanted to throw that out to see what you think about that.
I'm happy to comment, because I've also had, just having the benefit of working in London, which was going to a very, very dense specification, 1 to 8, 1 to 6. In very extreme cases. I've also had the distinct benefit of working in Berlin, which in Germany, for those of you that are familiar with that market, very traditional office space. People like having their own room. And I was actually working there during the pandemic at the very onset. And I definitely agree that I think we've almost hit the wall in some regards, in terms of that densification extreme. And I do think you're going to see some of that pedal back. I actually saw a very interesting study this morning, our Sydney office pulled together, that was looking at what is space absorption going to look like in Sydney over the next 3 years. And they compared it to historical absorption. And they're actually projecting net absorption to be higher. And they kind of break down what are the key variables that are going to impact that. So some of it is just office employment is going to continue to rise. But what they're showing is that actually, despite the fact that flexible working will decrease office use by X%, the gains in terms of office employment growth and, to your point, de-densification is actually going to outstrip that. and you will see higher net absorption is what they're predicting than the historical 20-year average, which was very, and I think we're feeling that, because when you go back into the office now and you try to have a Zoom call with people that are not in the office, it's incredibly disruptive. And so I still find out when I do go in the office, it's great when I have those natural encounters, but I'm also then going into an office for some quiet work, and I do need a little bit more space. The other thing that Oxford really championed, and we started this work actually before the COVID pandemic happened, ironically, is we were already looking at how we use things like lobby space and activating lobbies more and creating, I know people have always tried to create that kind of activated lobby, but it was always a bit sterile, particularly in North America, and actually had to actually put more things, libraries, cafes, that kind of thing, to also extend what is that traditional office space use. And then you share that as kind of communal area across your occupier.
Yes, sorry, Deborah, go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Alfonso. I was just going to say, I think what I'm finding where there's a really interesting coming together of younger generations and the more established professionals is this conversation about what are the values guiding the brief. You know, so I'm finding increasingly clients are coming to us and they're saying, here's the traditional model. We have this blend of architecture, design, and kind of, we're like an intelligence agency. We're, you know, building up that research intelligence. And I think that's where the next gen really steps forward, because I find when I'm working in a team with a client who's trying to reshape a vision for a whole district of central London, let's say, having agile young minds who have fresh out of college, who are really open and kind of know about new ways of doing things, they are brilliant ingredients in having conversations with people like you, Abigail, you know, to kind of broaden the discourse and kind of place values as well as efficiency, on your point, Martha, in a kind of balance. And I think there's an appetite now for really bringing in those younger voices early into that decision making. So it's a more balanced kind of, you know, grading. So we're obviously now being asked to look not just at financial value and environmental value, but social value. That's such a key component. So yeah, I think young people offer a lot in that direction. I don't know what others think.
Also, the law and policies don't change so quickly, do they?
Absolutely, that's a massive challenge. We had at ULI Spain just published 3 weeks ago a report on the impact on offices and residential of COVID. It's only a 12-month analysis, so it's not like the magic bullet for the future, but we coincide with Abby's analysis. Everything we've researched is that the balance between people having more space and the less people being in the office every day throws a net balance, which is slightly an increase in surface needed. Also because in Spain, like in London, funnily enough, because the square meter is much cheaper, but for some reason we had gone all the way in, and the average of large companies space per employee was between 6 and 7.5 square meters, which is nothing. I mean, it's really tiny because that includes the common areas. So that means people are really working in 2 square meters roughly. Okay, so first, the trend, instead of saying, okay, we want to change the amount of square meters per employee, the trend is completely different. Is we need our employees to be productive. For our employees to be productive, we need them to be comfortable, feel safe, and feel valued. So that means that before the landlord will talk to the senior person on real estate of the tenant, now he's talking to human resources of the tenant, because it's actually the employees and the users of the tenant who are driving, do they want to come back to the office? I mean, in the same company, in the same team, you will have 20% of the people who would say, I would rather not go to the office more than 1 time a week. And other people will say, I definitely need to go to the office as much as I can. So I think that the office will be more flexible. In gross terms will be slightly bigger or the same size, but in many places slightly bigger. And then the other thing that is very interesting, and this is a trend that ULI has been seeing for a while, is that the competition between countries, it's moving into a competition between cities. So there are cities who will be shrinking as job offering, talent offering, even leisure offering, and there will be cities that will be winning, so to speak, in this competition, where square meters will become more expensive, more difficult to get, higher quality, sustainable, quality of air, quality of sound, you know, really how can you help your employees be productive in the long term in a sustainable way, which is a very different attitude to the one when I started working. When I started working, you worked until you died, basically. And for as long as you did that, you were very productive and you were a good employee. I mean, the next gen has basically told us like 10 years ago, no, we want to work hard, but we want to do other things. And we want to contribute in a way that is more complex and richer than just working hard. So I think that also will impact a lot on how these things work.
Thanks, Alfonso. Just to circle back to something that Deborah mentioned about feedback from the next gen and sort of younger people getting involved in creating spaces. Deborah and Martha, what opportunities are there for real estate professionals to benefit and learn from the intergenerational learning and next gen networks, such as the European Taskforce?
Deborah, do you want to jump in?
Shall I kick off? Yeah, I mean, somebody's, you go too, because I've got somebody drilling here. I'm just going to get the window closed. You go.
Okay, thank you. You know, Emily, I have mixed feelings about when we talk about intergenerational. And I would say clearly each generation has some common qualities, but then the great thing is within a generation, people are so diverse. And that diversity comes from many, many sources. You know, we could talk about different culture, different geography, different life experiences, different ways of seeing the world. So I do think we definitely have, no matter what stage in life we're in, we have something to share. I think the key is not thinking that one generation or another corners the market on some aspect of that learning. For example, I know it's a cliche, and we say, "Oh, I teach a class called You Are the Mayor," which is really a lot of fun because most of the students in that course are undergraduate business students, and I do learn a lot from them. And I hope they learn from me, but I hope it's not just because they're young or just because I have experience. I think the important thing that has to bring people together is the curiosity, the open-mindedness, especially being open-minded for the new. And then just to close out this question about intergenerational, again, I think it would be a mistake if we tried to classify people as maybe we did in the past based on nationality or socioeconomic group or profession. I think when we start to try to define people, saying the elderly, the mid-career, the young, I think those are good as sort of these a first approximation. But then we have to fine tune much more, and we have to remember there's not one universal user of a product or a space or anything. And we have to, as Alfonso said, we have to build in choice, flexibility, and allow people to exercise their personality.
Yeah, I think I was just going to come back on that if I can. I think it's really interesting once you get older, when you're in an institute, you know, you're in a practice, in an office, in a workplace, the opportunities for intergenerational learning become narrower and narrower. I really think, I mean, what the big shift now is that workplaces are becoming places of learning in a much more structured way, and we really need to look at ways of breaking down the boundaries. You know, these kind of events that we go to, I mean, I always find the next gen stuff just as interested as the CPA, and I love coming to any of them because having a kind of filter of calling next gen brings a certain set of expectations for me, and they're always exceeded, challenged, and so I don't mind the kind of, I really enjoy the sort of banding of next gen as a talent pool. And I just think we were thinking about, you know, when we go on a trip to a building with the CPA and we have next gen and older gen together, the peer learning, you know, of a group doing a trip together is just so rich in a way that exceeds your expectations. And I think schools in the design world, schools are definitely 10 to 20 years ahead of business, or maybe 10 to 15. They are so much more advanced. They're embedded in research. And so as a creative practitioner, I think I do everything in my power, like setting up a new school of architecture, to kind of mesh education and the traditional understanding of education, to sort of blur the boundaries across. So you get this triangulation between, you know, young, old, works, you know, different people in different parts of their life, so it becomes a much more blurred sort of a virtuous loop is what I call it, so that you can keep on learning. Because I think it's great, Alfonso talks about people who have many careers, but evolving your career at the moment is not as easy as it should be. I think it's really hard. You have to design your own career and create your own paths. So I think businesses should be alert, maybe they are, but not in architecture, to helping people evolve and sort of move on in a creative way. Anyway, lots to say.
Thanks, Deborah. Following on from that, how do you think that we can ensure that diverse and international talent remain attracted to work in the City of London now that Britain has left the EU?
Well, maybe I can jump in there. And I think people make a decision about where they will live. We know that it's not always based on money. Of course, economics is important, and as things such as affordable housing, as Alfonso had mentioned before, and the opportunity to develop a lifestyle, those things are important. I think when we look at what maybe motivates people to move to a place, it has things to do with what Abigail said, or Deborah. It's people can find their own path. So I think that without a doubt, the political message of Brexit is an obstacle, because you know, that has to do with policy. It has to do with laws that are difficult sometimes to navigate, or maybe difficult in the future. I think on the other hand, as Alfonso was mentioning about cities competing, it's cities that are open, that embrace people from different places. If the lifestyle is one that's conducive to different stages in life, family life, individuals, younger, older, different types of family structures. And I think if there is an offering to enrich the personal life, whether that's educational offerings or cultural or music or just spontaneous gatherings of people, those things are the really important ones, and that will keep a city competitive. I think next to or even above the political or the economic concerns.
I completely agree, Martha. Also, Alfonso, another question for you I had was, the CP has got a strong working relationship with the City of London Corporation, and as well as a track record of representing its members to national government. What do you think Europe can learn from London about private and public sector collaboration?
Thank you, Emily. Well, first of all, I don't think we can fix our cities and create a brighter future if it's only done by the administrations, or it's only done by private capital. You need the vision of the administration, the stability, the sort of long-term goals, and also the ability to reach agreements. I mean, most administrations and political institutions are used to the fact that you have to talk to everybody and try to include the stakeholders. It's painful, it's not easy. Sometimes the business universe is more on, this is what I want to do and this is the way I'm going to do it, while the administration can mix this element of what the people need, what the stakeholders need. Okay, so first, in terms of attitude and, if you want, philosophy and vision. Two, in terms of capital. I mean, most town halls and most regions have struggled financially, first with the financial crisis and now with COVID. the private sector is swimming in capital in the nicest possible way. We can put those two things together to make the capital from the private sector work with some of the visions of the public sector and the stakeholders and accelerate the change for better. I think it's critical. I mean, I think that basically if we don't reach higher levels of collaboration, and I know the City of London is a very positive example, and I know also, for example, the Town Hall of Amsterdam has a tradition of working across the board with all political colors, all sectors of the industry, all stratas of society, from the very wealthy to the much less favored, and that creates solutions which are practicable and sustainable in the long term. So I think it's critical.
Thanks, Alfonso. Following on from that, Abby, the Oxford Properties Group is a multinational corporation with offices located all over the world. Which policies can organisations put into place to support talented workers to move overseas, whether that's to London or Europe, and develop their experience? And how do you think local and national government could support this?
Yeah, thanks, Emily. I think there's a couple of pieces in that. So, and I think it also segues into the point that Alfonso also raised around, you know, we have to continue to be pushing and learning new things to elongate your career. And I, you know, speaking at least from personal experience, I'm American. I've worked for Oxford for 10 years. I've worked across UK, France, and Germany. We have moved people around our business to Asia Pac. We've moved people back and forth from Canada. We actually do champion giving, you know, top talent an opportunity to expand their opportunities, both from a geographical perspective as well as a sector perspective. And I think that that is actually incredibly important to continue to invest and develop well-rounded, you know, talented professionals. So I think some of it comes from a corporate culture piece, to be very honest. I think there's an element which is just the company should be, you know, does it embrace the value that can be brought forward by giving those types of opportunities to their talent. But for sure, there is an administrative burden that comes with that. You know, I think there's some countries it's easier to make those relocation efforts for. I think others are much more bureaucratic, I guess, in nature. You know, openly, I'm not an HR professional, but I would say, you know, I'd like to think that governments will continue to champion, especially, you know, what I find interesting is you also overlay that with kind of declining birth rates, and some of these countries are going to really have to embrace how immigration continues and how they attract that top talent to their cities and to their countries to obviously offset some of that negative impact. And I actually think I personally I'm hopeful that we're going to see more of that. You know, I think it'll be very interesting to watch what the UK does now that it's out of the EU in terms of its, you know, how it wants to define those immigration policies without any kind of further restrictions. I think the US is going to go through its own evolution with a new administration in place. I think Canada has always actually been, I think Canada's a fascinating country that has, I think it's probably one of the most successful countries in terms of how to embrace immigration in a really positive way and integrate people that come from lots of different cultures and different parts of the world. So yeah, I think it just starts with that cultural element and people valuing it as opposed to being worried about it.
Thanks, Abby. I totally agree. Following on from that, how do you think that access to international talent increases business competitiveness and supports staff development? Abby, you can answer that, or maybe Martha.
You know, I think Abby, you probably have more experience in the professional world. I can certainly speak from the point of view of a university and the School of Architecture and Design. I think what it does is businesses are not only successful in terms of the bottom line when they have diversity. And they're not only more sensitive because they understand different points of view, but I think it does really contribute to the culture of the place, to encouraging people to be curious, to even be more innovative. Because when the norms are broken down or maybe antiquated rules about how things are done, when those are set aside in favor of diversity, it allows people to free up their mind and think outside the box. It's not always easy because there could be misunderstandings. We have different ways of doing things. Vocabularies may mean different things in different places. But I see it in our students, as Alfonso mentioned, in our Master in Real Estate Development in the City program, 26 different nationalities, with the philosophy, again, that Deborah mentioned, learning from each other. I think this can only lead to success because it leads to not only understanding, but it leads to a sharing of knowledge. Challenges people on one hand to be more, to be better, but also contributes knowledge to the whole institution.
Yeah, I think following on, I mean, one of the things I love about working for Oxford and particularly in the London team, and we'd have, I can't quote the number of nationalities, but people from France, Germany, Malaysia, the US, Canada, South Africa, I mean, from all over. And I am someone, I'm ambitious. I'm someone that likes to learn. And I think, you know, one of the things that keeps me in London is I feel every day that I am being pushed to be the best kind of professional that I can be, and learning from some pretty spectacular and impressive people. And I do think that that's a kind of a rare ingredient that London brings.
Thanks, Martha. Thanks, Abby. We have a question from the audience, which I think would be great for you, Deborah. A question from Maria, which says, is there a formula that would make city makers, so real estate developers, public policy makers, architects, designers, work closer than they do now? How can cities promote multidisciplinary teams when building sustainable cities?
That's a really, really good question, because I think one of the difficulties now is, I don't know if others are encountering that, is we have been brought up with modernity, where in this drive for efficiency, we've been sent down these narrower and narrower paths to be siloed with our expertise. So you're an expert in this, you're an expert in this. And so you have multidisciplinary teams. What we're now finding is we need transdisciplinary skills. So when I put an ad on LinkedIn or Insta or whatever to get talent here, we just basically say, if you like architecture, research, landscape, urbanism, basically come with ideas, because we need people who can work across those boundaries. I would say where we need change is in procurement. I'm sorry to be so anecdotal. I was invited to participate in a master planning exercise a few weeks ago by a local authority, a city maker, for a huge new park. And I looked down the list of skills and they didn't mention landscape. It's a park. So I think this kind of siloing, we really need to find a way, ideas welcome. How do you bring together with procurement that's open and public, a way of bringing diversity of contributors and kind of non-siloed mentality? So for me, that would be the main thing I would, so I suppose that demands a cultural shift. So you have to start changing hearts and minds at a very high level to see that the kind of the tick box assessment and criteria that you go through, particularly under EU procurement, let's say. I'm interested to see maybe London can come up with some new, more agile but transparent ways of getting talent and letting them try to bring people together. Yeah, great question.
Oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to add to that, Deborah. I totally agree with you. I think also we have to start to modify definitions of what an architect does, what a real estate developer does. And maybe I could just relay an experience I had well, it was now just a few months ago. I was asked through our Center for Sustainable Cities here at the school to facilitate a competition looking for a team to renovate an urban space. And it was really interesting because it's private development money investing in public space. Right there is a wonderful combination. And the private developers, I have to say, they were incredibly open, because the message we tried to give to them is not that you are selecting a project. You are choosing a strategy and a team. And you as developers have to change the way you work. You don't just hand over the brief and come back for the opening of the project. You have to be a collaborative participant step by step. And I have to say, I'm really impressed that they embraced this. The team that was selected is from 3 different countries that have come together. And I know it's not easy. The next year that they are developing the project will be challenging for everybody. But I think it's this change in mindset, as you mentioned, you know, sort of one heart, one mind. I think that, along with the idea of partnerships, in this case, it's private money and public space. But I know there are many other ideas for public-private partnerships that maybe could be one of the ways that we can facilitate this more interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary collaboration.
Thanks, Martha. Another question following that for you. How do you think the launch of the new European Task Force can sort of promote this sort of diversity and collaboration of talent across borders? That can be for you, Martha, or for anyone.
Well, I think that you know, I'm somebody that I love to join organizations. I love to meet new people and new initiatives. So I think that by having a task force that clearly states that you know, it's European, and by focusing, calling people's attention in the beginning, I think through the efforts of different types of activities, it can only be a really positive thing. And it's like a seed that you plant when you have an event, when you have an initiative, and people come together with a common goals or shared interests, then they naturally grow. And there may be research projects, there may be new job opportunities, there may be advisory committees to policymakers, things like that I think will naturally grow out of it.
Thanks, Martha. We had also another interesting question that came through. Alfonso, I know you've already answered it, but I didn't know if you wanted to touch upon it regarding the continent of Africa and the fact that the continent currently has the youngest generation of talent and will experience doubling changes in population growth. And Benjamin has asked, he would like to know whether we agree that we have to implement cross-border initiatives in order to satisfy the demand on the African continent. Do you have anything else you would like to add on that, Alfonso?
Well, I said in my short written answer that I think that there are lots of misconceptions about Africa. I don't know Africa very well, but I was reading about population in the world about 4 months ago, maybe 5 now. And I was completely taken aback by the fact that the growth in population in the world right now is basically happening in Africa, which is going to basically double its population. I think it's in the next 15 or 20 years. So very, very, very quickly. That means a lot of talent, but that also means a lot of needs, a lot of infrastructure to be built, a lot of education institutions to be created, a lot of opportunities to create paths for people to develop. And it goes both ways. It will be African talent going to other places in the world to work, but it will be Western or Asia Pac talent going into Africa to serve those needs and those requirements. So, you know, coming from a country like Spain, which I think is the second in the world with lowest birth rate, and one of the countries in the world which is aging fastest in the world as well, I think the fact that other parts of the world are growing and the youngs are still very numerous, and therefore there is potential. And I think Abby touched on this as well. I also said that unfortunately, in the very short recent times, we've seen countries closing their borders a little bit more. We need to be smarter about that. We need to be more scientific to some extent, but also more long-term looking. And we will need to adapt to the fact that we need that talent in the West, and that probably those countries will benefit a lot from part of the talent that we generate in the West or in other parts of the world. So we need to be smarter, and we have to be more creative, which is a perfect scenario in which engaging with people from Africa would help the rest of us understand what they need, what the opportunities are, where is the talent coming from, what that talent needs, how can we put that talent to work. So definitely.
Thanks, Alfonso. And a final question to all of our panelists. Do you have any advice for the next gen and talent in the next gen for sort of starting their careers and how they can collaborate across borders? What would be your sort of best piece of advice of getting their foot in the door in the real estate industry and yeah, collaborating with others across Europe?
Could I just add something to very quickly conclude on the Africa subject? I was just thinking, it occurred to me, it's really interesting. One of the things we noticed when we set up the London School of Architecture is we had a number of students coming from South Africa, for example, and we didn't expect that. And we discovered that there was no postgraduate school of architecture at that time in the whole of Africa. No postgraduate education in architecture. That's now changing, thankfully, but I think there are just so many opportunities for reaching out and developing education in partnership across Africa. So Leslie Loco, who is a fantastic academic who's just been in New York, her next project is to set up a School of Architecture in Ghana that offers this next, to really nurture the talent and really help. She's Ghanaian, she's sort of bringing her talent there. And people like Sir David Adjaye, the architect, have used their position as a person of African heritage to use Africa as a research topic and to reveal these amazing discoveries that the West have just not taken the time to realize. So there's definitely a need for this kind of learning empathy to be built between all of the world, and there'll be so many discoveries to be found there. So back to the best advice, I'll pass to the others.
I mean, one idea from my perspective, if you have joined CPA, be an active member of CPA. If you join the IE or the London School of Architecture, be an active member there. Contribute, work, share, connect. You live in the most connected planet in history. So make the most of it. Just use it and contribute to it, because I am a chairman of another association, and sometimes I get the feeling that some of our members are not really making the most of it. So what's the point? Once you join an institution who is trying to help and is trying to create bridges and networks, make the most of it. Get engaged into it, because that's what we all need. If we want the next gen to be integrated in what we do every day, we need you, ladies and gentlemen, to start doing it. And we'll try to create as many platforms as we can so that you can do it.
Thanks, Alfonso. I think that's great advice.
I think the only thing I would just say is don't be shy. I think oftentimes, and I remember being a grad student or even an undergrad when I was looking for a new job, and you kind of just think nobody wants to speak to you, but actually we've all been there. And I think what you'll find is if you take the leap of faith, reach out to people that you think are interesting, want to learn more about their business or their organization or anything that they're doing, I think you're going to find that there's a warm welcome to have a chat in the first instance, and that network is really powerful.
It's interesting. I think I have two bits of advice. One is not my own, but I remember a conversation with architect Shapiro, Japanese architect who lives in Paris and works in Paris as well as Tokyo, and who won the Pritzker Prize a few years ago. A student asked him, "How I want to be a great architect. I want to be contribute. What do I do?" And he said, "Don't worry about it, but travel." And I think this is a really good piece of advice. Traveling, putting ourselves sort of outside the box in new situations, and not trying to judge when we're in those situations is something that's really positive. It can open the world, it can provide new opportunities, or it can just sort of reduce the fear about the new and enlarge our understanding about other places. So the first is, if you have the opportunity, travel and observe when you're there. And the second one is what I often tell students. We have a very robust internship program for our architecture students. We combine internships, half-day internships, while they are learning online and undertaking their academic program. And this has been going on for many years, and it seems to be, it's challenging, but it seems to be successful. And what I sometimes find with the students when they're looking for an internship is they think it's a super important decision. Where am I going to undertake this internship, this first job? And it's like a life important decision, life-changing decision. Well, maybe it is, but I think there are lots and lots of decisions in life that maybe are not perfect. And it's better to jump in the swimming pool, try something new, and know, well, if it doesn't work out, or if it's not as I expected, it's always an experience, and you can shift course and move on to something else. We tend to think that every decision is the most important. And I think it's better to remember all decisions are important, but there's always an alternative. And that's something that I've learned from the field of architecture. There's never one right design, one right project, one right solution. There are many. So I would encourage people not to be hung up, jump in, and if it doesn't work out, shift gears and try something else.
Thanks, Martha, and thanks, Abby. Deborah?
Oh, very similar sentiments. I think the most important thing, if you want to make the most of it, is to identify the kind of higher purpose of what you think your life's about. You know, when you've been young and you've been finding yourself running after certain things, or is to try and triangulate and make a network diagram about all of your interests and work out where they intersect. You know, going back to these things about being transdisciplinary rather than thinking you have to reside in one territory. You can span, and you can create your own job. And to do that, you need, like everyone's been saying, is to show agency, which is the action that you take. I have a motto, which is you place yourself in the path of luck. Luck is all around you, but you have to intersect with luck. And that means going out and doing things. And finally, I did a whole PhD, years and years of study. And the simple thing I learned was to be yourself. You know, when you feel yourself going back to this higher purpose, being pushed or trying to be something that's not you, stand back and, you know, say, what do I need to be? And quite often it's the right decision. So that's my advice.
Thanks, Deborah. I think that's brilliant advice. And thank you very much to all our brilliant panelists. I think that was a very insightful and interesting discussion. And we are actively looking for new members of the European Taskforce. So please do get in touch with the CPA or the IE teams if you'd like to join the European Taskforce. And thank you very much for joining us today. And again, another big thanks to our brilliant panelists.
Thanks, Emily.
Thank you, Emily.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Emily. Well chaired.
Thank you, everyone.